fuck? Dude, you've been, what? You've been to KFC and not told me? What the fuck, dude? Oh, fuck you, I'm leaving. I think we should start this one with a dab. Yeah, let's do a dab. Oh. What's up, dudes? Welcome to another tattoo tips video. So this video, get ready for it, is going to be how to improve your portrait tattoos within 3 simple steps. Now, I know what you're saying. You've been trying portraits for ages and nothing you seem to be doing is working. And what tips could I possibly give you to make these portraits a little bit easier on you? I know. So I'm going to give you 3 tips that will help improve you in portrait tattooing. These tips are just what I know and what have helped me in portrait tattoos. Like I said, everybody knows me for portraits. It's what I do, and it's what I still implement into my tattoos this very day. Well, I tell a lie. It's not exactly the same thing. I've adapted it a little bit, but that's more for a like advanced pro portrait artist. This video is more definitely aimed at the person that's just getting into portraits or wanting to get into portraits. You may be a seasoned artist, you may have been doing it for 15 years and maybe you only do like neo-trad or traditional or something like that. So this video is definitely going to be for you as well. So guys, let's get right to it, shall we? Where's my notes? Where the fucking hell's my notes gone? You'd think I know what I talked about, but you know, I've got notes, so just leave the video, dudes. Just leave the video. No, don't leave the video. I'm only joking. I promise you, I know what I'm talking about. Now, so portraits. When it comes to portraits, all right, they are very, very, very daunting. When it comes to doing portraits, a lot of artists definitely do get scared of them. All right, they look at a portrait and it's like, holy shit. But what I'm here to tell you is, if you do these 3 tips and you simplify your portrait, all right, if you stop looking at a portrait as a whole thing, and we break the portrait down, I can almost guarantee that you will progress and you will want to push yourself forward with doing portraits. That is the idea anyway, but at the end of the day, it's all up to you and how you take this knowledge, what I'm giving you, and applying it. All right, so tip number 1. Obviously, tip number 1 has got to be finding the right picture to start off with. A lot of clients come in sometimes with a picture of a child, of a loved one, of a celebrity they want, a singer, a film star, whatever. Obviously, we all know that Marvel tattoos are a big thing, so they may come in with a Marvel tattoo, all right, a Marvel portrait that they're wanting. Tip number 1 is find the best reference. Okay, so say you found the perfect reference, all right. There is a ton of nice black in there. There's loads of super cool gradients, all right. You've got a nice, you've got some lovely values in there. It goes from dark to medium to light to extra dark. It's all in there. You have found it. But then, like I said, looking at this reference in front of you, you might be thinking like, holy fucking shit, where do I start? What do I do? How am I going to pull this off? Now, there is a simple way that you can do a portrait and make it easier on yourself by breaking the portrait down. Now, by breaking the portrait down, I don't mean by like studying it. Obviously, extra tip, you can sit there for an hour and you can really study it. The longer you study the portrait, the more that you will see, essentially. But then if you're tattooed the next day, then you've pretty much lost all the information that you've retained in that hour. so it's not really ideal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go straight to Photoshop, and I'm going to take this picture that we've got. I'm going to show you how to simplify that picture, break it up, and while we're there, I'm going to talk you through everything. So let's get into Photoshop. Also, sound quality may differ because I'm going to go onto my headset. Just saying. Okay guys, and here we are in Photoshop. Since we have gone on the reference of Marvel, I figured I would stick to Marvel with this reference just to show you. But okay, so straight into it. Say we have our client that's come in. They want a Thor tattoo. Alright, so we've got this beautiful picture of Chris Hemsworth that they want sticking on their leg. You could look at that now as it is, and for me, it's pretty easy. I can see everything in this portrait where it needs to be, and I'd be able to pull this portrait off fine. But what you might be thinking is, holy fucking shit, where do I even start with this? What do I do? I can't see my tones very well. Oh my god, I'm shitting my pants. So here's what you do, guys. So firstly, this that I'm using is Photoshop CC, the 2020 version. If you do not have your hands on Photoshop 2020, it will work on any other Photoshop program that you've got. There is even apps now that you can get on iPads and stuff like that you can do this very same thing with, so do not worry if you cannot get Photoshop. So here we have our black and white image. I'm looking at this image. I was like, yeah, well, firstly, it's a little flat. It's not going to be too tattooable. You could tattoo it and get away with it, but it's still a little bit flat for me, personally. So anyway, what are we going to do? Right. So up in the top corner, if your image is not black and white already, what you're going to go to is you're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then Black and White. Obviously this photo's already black and white, so we don't need to do that. But then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. You can leave this on the same layer. You don't need to create a different layer or anything like that. Obviously, we're just breaking up the portrait. Now, firstly, to break up the portrait, what we want to do is really increase our lights. As we increase our lights, the further and further and further that we go, you can see that it breaks up the face more and more and more and more. Now, what we want to be doing is finding a nice balance of that highlight to break up the face, but to not take out too much of the face. Obviously, this is way too much. So what we want to be doing is finding a nice balance, maybe just a little bit in the forehead. So probably like that. So already, if we zoom in, let's just lower this. If we zoom in, okay, we have got a nice highlight on the top of the cheek here. We've got a nice highlight coming down the cheek. We've got a nice highlight on the nose. We've got highlight on the forehead, which splits up all the forehead. Now, as you advance in portraits, you could go less and less and less highlights because you will get used to being able to read your reference and stuff. But for the very basic beginner who's getting into portraits, I would suggest doing this. However, if you are somebody that is doing portraits for a while and you still like to put the big highlights in because it's easier to break down for you, you can by all means do that and stencil it like that. Just have a non-highlighted reference at the side of you so you can refer back to it. And then once you've got all this in, alright, then you can just start filling the highlights off of your full reference, you know, so you if you didn't want your portraits to have such a harsh highlight, you'd be able to fill that in, no problem. But here we have the nice harsh highlight. So already this has broke up the face, it's broke up the nose, it's broke up the cheek. So when it comes to tattooing it, alright, we can see that this is just a mid-tone. There is a little bit of a darker mid-tone right here, but then it comes basically mid-tone. You could get away with mid-tone all the way round this cheek up to here, and then when it gets under the eye, you can see how it goes darker. So maybe mid-tone and a dip in dark, alright, to get this tone right here and to come under the eye right here. So basically what you've done is you've split up the cheek now. So you've basically split down that cheek into just 2 tones just on this very bit. 1 tone around the cheek and 1 tone in the eye. Right, so we've got that bit. Now we can see that this bit's a little bit darker at the top of the eye. So we might want to go with a dark tone for that bit, for example. But then this tone here on the top of the eye, again, is the exact same tone as what's in the cheek. So you've only got 3 tones to work with and a really dark tone in the eye. So you've split up the portrait and you've made it easier for you to see where your tones are. Same on this side. Alright, there's not much of a highlight, but there's enough of a highlight that you can see. There's a little bit too much highlight in the hair. So again, like I said, having a full reference at the side of you just to refer back for the hair, or to fill in the highlights a little bit more if you're not happy, is always a good idea to have at the side of you. Now, to go one step further, you've got your highlights, but you're still not happy with being able to see your darks. So what you want to do is you want to go over to the burn tool, which is on the left hand side. You want your mid-tones to be darker, alright? All this is all mid-tone, alright? It's you know, there's different variations of mid-tone in it, but it's pretty much all mid-tone. So what you want to be doing is going up to the top on range, clicking your mid-tones, bringing your exposure down to around 10%. Okay, and then you want to start just trying to pick out where your darker tones are. So I can see a darker tone, alright, comes down this side of the eye. But again, because your eye's not used to looking at portraits, you might not see that as well as I see that. So what you can do is you can take your burn tool, okay, and then you can just burn in all these darker spots around there, under the eye here, coming down a little bit, around the eye there, coming down here, underneath here. You can make this a little bit darker if you want, make this darker around here, make the nose a little bit darker. What you want when it comes to portraits, having a nose is a big thing. It's a really big thing. It makes a portrait look so much better once you've got a nice sharp nose. This portrait, for me, what I would probably do is I would probably add some tone just down this side of the nose, down the left side, like that. Maybe not as dark as that, but I would definitely add tone down that side, just to bring out the nose a lot more. And then definitely round the bottom of the nostrils, chopping it round there. So I can see some mid-tone in this cheek that maybe when I print it out I won't be able to see. So it's best just to put it in now. Down there, down there. Alright, I'm just doing this really quick. You can obviously take your time. But as you can see now, alright, we've started separating the cheek even more with some darker tone, some mid-tone, some darker tone down the nose. However, okay, do not tattoo the reference like this, okay?
If the reference needs to be darker, then by all means make it darker, but there is no need to tattoo the reference like this. This is just simply to help you see where your tones are, so it makes the portrait a lot easier on you to be able to read it a lot better. There we go, around the nose. Might want to darken up this top lip maybe. Maybe you're struggling on the bottom lip, you can't see where the bottom lip is a little bit, so we can just darken up that bottom lip so you can see where it is. There's a little bit on the eyebrow, just darken that. There's quite a difference between the mid-tone here to the eyebrow area, so you can do that. Get the forehead in over there. Right, okay, so now basically you have broken up your portrait into 3 different tones. Okay, we've got a dark, we've got a medium, and we've got a light. Okay, compared to what we started with, where you couldn't see any of this basically. So when you're starting out at portraits, doing something like this is definitely worth it to start out with. As you get more and more seasoned at doing portraits, you can do this less and less and less as you train your eye to be able to see what you need to see. If you left a portrait like this on skin, obviously all this is going to be skin. But the thing is, when you are starting out, it will look like Thor. It will look like Chris Hemsworth. And if your portrait looks like who it's supposed to look like, it is a good portrait, guys. Do not let anybody tell you that a portrait is bad when it looks like the person it's meant to look like. You can look at some of the best tattooers in the world and they don't always nail the portrait. Technically, the portrait is absolutely mint. It's sound, it's smooth as anything, the tones are beautiful, it's going to heal nice, but it doesn't look like the person. Right? That's a bad portrait. It's got whoever you are tattooing is coming to you for a portrait. That portrait is meant to look like that person, so you get as close to that person as you possibly can. By doing something like this and breaking it down, you are golden. Obviously, everything is your preference, how you want to do it. You can make it a lot more or a lot less than you like. This is just a way to break down the portrait into the simplest form of shapes and shades. Everything in a portrait is just a different shape and just a different shade. Do not get put off by it being a portrait, okay?
That is how I started out on portraits. And that is how I got my portraits to where they are today, okay? By having that really light sort, that light reference, okay? And really breaking up that face, using that burn tool and really getting in there to separate those tones a little bit more. It really works, guys, and I highly recommend doing it. But tip number 3 for a better portrait would be stencil. Obviously, it seems like such an obvious thing, but there's a difference between having a stencil and a stencil, if you get what I mean, alright? Artists, sometimes when it comes to doing portrait work and realism, they have little to nothing in their stencil, just a basic shape. Now, if that artist can work like that and can still do a good job, then by all means, please crack on with it. You do you. However, for me, a stencil is your roadmap, alright? When it comes to a stencil, if you've got everything that you need, every little bit of information in front of you, that limits the possibility of messing up, basically. If the information is there, even if you don't use it, it's there, and you have the option to use it. If your stencil gets if you're doing a stencil and you've gone a little bit overly detailed, then you can always refer back to your image to see what that bit is. It definitely works, so definitely having a good stencil, a good detailed stencil is an absolute must, in my opinion, to a good portrait. Everything starts with a stencil. if your stencil is wrong, if you stencil it wrong, your tattoo will be wrong. Okay, if you put it on the skin wrong, it will be wrong. Your portrait will be wrong. You are following this thing. You are relying on your stencil more than you are relying on the actual image. Okay, it's not like you're doing it freehand, is what I'm saying. So you are putting your trust in your stencil. So say we've got a stencil, guys, and everything is hunky-dory. Okay, you have that stencil and you are ready to apply that stencil. Now, when it comes to applying a stencil, the way that I like to do it is I will take my Electrum, stencil stuff, anchored, Dettol, whatever you are using as your stencil solution. What I like to do personally is I will rub it in the skin, then I will let the stencil stuff or stencil solution dry, and then what I will do is I will take a small amount and just reapply to skin, and it like reactivates it, and it makes you get the nice tacky stickiness from doing that. When you are about to put your stencil on skin, having that real nice tackiness to the skin is what you are wanting. That is how you get the best results from your stencil. If you go too if you put too much stencil on, then obviously what's going to happen is the carbon on the paper is just going to start bleeding, and merging into other lines, especially if you've got lines close together, like say the eyes or something like that. It's all going to start merging. So you're wanting that tackiness. That is the best way that I found to get that tackiness, is just put the stencil solution on, completely rub it in till it practically feels like there's none there, and then just reactivate it, with a little bit more, bish bash bosh, stencil's ready to go. Obviously, when it comes to stencil as well, also be careful not to double line your stencil. If you have a paper stencil and you are not using a thermal stencil with the really thin paper, you definitely want to be putting your stencil on a lower GSM paper, just so you get a lot more give in the paper. You also want to be putting cuts all the way around. Okay, don't cut into your stencil, just cut around the paper. That'll give some give in the paper also, and it'll help you, bend the stencil around if you are wanting to go around a forearm or around an arm, or for example. Do everything that you can not to double line. You're wanting a nice clean stencil, clean readable stencil. If you get a little bit of double lining, say in the hair, then it's not really going to make a difference at all. It's not going to affect your portrait. But your main feature is the face. You want no double lines on that face. Hair, fine, have some double lines. It's not going to kill the portrait for you. Clothing, maybe, all right, you could have some double lines in, and it's not going to do much to hinder your progress in the portrait. But definitely the face, no double lines on the face, clean. Another top tip when it comes to stencil is to have a sharp pencil, a hard lead pencil, okay, and sharpen it. And basically anything that keeps a point. I find a biro is too thick when it comes to getting into smaller details. The biro is just way too thick for it. So get yourself a nice hard lead pencil, sharpen that bitch, all right? Get in there, get it like razor sharp on the edge, and then do your stencil that way. That way all your lines will be consistent throughout, okay, not different thicknesses and stuff, all right? You'll have any details that you've got, you'll be able to get. So definitely a sharp, hard lead pencil that keeps its point. Okay, so now you have your stencil on. You might be worried, fuck me, what if I lose this stencil? Okay, when it comes to a portrait, I've been there, I've lost my stencil, and it becomes a sweat fest. It definitely does, all right? You start absolutely shitting your pants. Especially if you're new to portraits. You might be able to do a portrait on paper completely awesome, but trust me, when it comes to doing it on skin, the pressure is definitely real. So when it comes to actually tattooing, the actual tattoo process, and when it comes to your stencil, I always let my stencil dry for a good 15 to 20 minutes before I even start tattooing. I know of artists that actually leave their clients for an hour to let that stencil really dry in when it comes to doing portraits. Now that's, to me, a little bit extreme. Once it's dry, it's dry. And the next battle comes with the actual tattoo process itself. Now, when it comes to tattooing and the tattoo process, a lot of people have green soap. Now, I don't like green soap, okay? I just use water, all right? I have 2 water cups filled with distilled water, and that is it. I use a paper towel, and I dip my paper towel in my water, and I wipe the tattoo down that way, okay? When it's just water, it will preserve your stencil so much more than green soap. Obviously, green soap is a cleaning agent, and you are cleaning the skin down with this. That is compromising your stencil. With water, all we're wanting to do is we want to take away the excess ink and the excess Vaseline if needed, preserving the stencil so you can get through that 8, 9, 10 hour process without losing your stencil. It's as simple as that. It's just a simple trick, but it is a good trick. Okay, like I said, a lot of artists still using green soap. I don't recommend it. You can do that in color, but not black and gray. In color, you could bloodline your stencil in, all right, and you're not gonna see anything. But when it comes to black and gray, your stencil's everything. So preserving that stencil for as long as possible is where it is at. So water does that. Water definitely does that. I've had 10, 11 hour, 12 hour sit-ins, and my stencil is still there when it comes to taking a picture when I've completed the tattoo. Do not get caught up in which is the best solution, stencil stuff anchored, Electrum, aloe, whatever it's called. They all work and they all do the job. Preserving the stencil though is where it's at, so just use water. Anyway, I think that was a lot more than 3 tips. I don't know, man, why we really pushed the boat out on that one. Like, there was a stencil tip, but then there was a tip in the tip and the tip. So I think you've got a lot more than you bargained for there, to be honest. A bonus one, okay? A bonus tip that I love to take into portraits, and that is mindset, all right? I do preach it a lot, but to me, mindset is everything when it comes to tattooing. If you are defeated before you even do the tattoo, you are not getting far at all. So yeah, mindset, go in there, tell yourself that you're gonna absolutely kill it, and that there is no better artist to do that job than you right now. So yeah, dudes, off on your merry way, get your clients in, all right, do some free portraits, and start practicing them. But before I leave, guys, there is other tattoo tips videos on the channel. They aren't currently on in a playlist, but they're all labeled tattoo tips. I will try and get them in a playlist for you. But go check those videos out. Some of them are really, really shit, but the content in them, what's said, is really, really good. So head over to the rest of my channel, check out my other videos, my other tattoo tips. You might find something in there. Also, subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate a sub. I mean, come on now, give me a sub. Give us a like, turn on bell notifications, all right, so you don't miss a video. And I'll see you all in the next one. Adios.